Explanation of task and prior knowledge. The topic is food webs and it fits into the curriculum through the biological science strand and achievement strand, interactions between organisms including the effects of human activities that can be represented by food chains and food webs. The students have had previous lessons on the classifications of animals, so that's including like fishes, birds, amphibians, and the necessary features an animal must have to be in those categories. The students had discussed the meaning of an ecosystem prior to me coming into the class, and the different types of the ecosystems that are found. That can include marine, the desert, the tundra, but however, not many had made the connection between animals or had put any information into a food web format. Introducing the investigation involved brainstorming, utilising a whiteboard, an interactive whiteboard, about what they know about food webs. I also asked students if they know how a food web may be different to a food chain. And then we also looked back at the possible categories as sorted animals and plants into their specific categories. This including, a herbivore and a carnivore, or a fish and a mammal. Then I put everything onto the whiteboard and asked for students to refer back to their notes. Also, looking to introduce note taking as a serious aspect of the learning, making sure that they were getting the information down onto paper. Commencing with the lesson, activity 1 involved students getting into groups of 3 and sorting out a set of cards with animals and plants on them into different categories. These categories could include their diet, their classification, where they live, and so on. The next phase was the students being given a plant or an animal to really identify and work on and build a food web around that animal or plant that they were given. Inquiry questions. So what I looked at was how many connections can you make with your food webs? What categories could we sort these animals and plants into? Really trying to interact with the students, engage with them, build positive discussion. What is a food web and what does that represent? And how are these animals and plants interrelated? What is their relationship? What do they do together? The inquiry skills targeted involved, communication with group members and to fellow classmates in the presentation. Again, really wanting to promote discussion. Communicating ideas, findings, and evidence based on solutions to problems using scientific language and representations using digital technologies as appropriate. Another one was processing and analysing data. That's in the curriculum saying construct and use a range of representations including graphs, keys and models to represent and analyse patterns or relationships in data using digital technologies as appropriate. And then also questioning, predicting the activities through the activities, identifying questions and problems that can be investigated scientifically and make predictions based on the scientific knowledge. The concepts that were being developed was the organisms can be classified into groups through observations. Constructing food webs can show the relationships between organisms in an environment. And ecosystem, animals and plants are interrelated through a multitude of independent survival needs. On to the next phase of the lesson. Activity 2 involved students that had finished activity 1 to create their own food web individually. Students had a choice of a plant or animal from the activity cards as a base, as a building block, to which the student can think about the animals, the plants within the initial animal's ecosystem to include in the food web. Once the student had attempted creating the food web based on their prior knowledge from other lessons and this lesson, then they were to use the internet to support their investigation. Inquiry questions involved what ecosystem does this animal or plant belong to? That's what we really need to know. And how many connections can you make within your food web? And also, how are these animals and plants interrelated? What is their relationship? Similar to activity one, again, we were building upon our science inquiry skills, this involving communication in the classroom, again, peer discussion, looking to use scientific language, terminology, and then again, looking to actually use digital technologies as appropriate. So the utilization of iPads and laptops for their research. The data, again, looking at a range of representations, looking at patterns, relationships, and using digital technologies when appropriate. And also, again, questioning and predicting through the activities, problems that could be investigated scientifically, and making predictions based on the research and the scientific knowledge that the student has. Thinking and working scientifically was shown through students representing the information that they'd found and communicating that with their peers, really, again, promoting that peer discussion, and also utilising their prior knowledge, so making predictions, which was excellent to see. The scientific concepts that were being developed was students constructing food webs and showing the relationships between the organisms and the environment. And again, just seeing that wide range of animals and plants being related to the ecosystem. What I learned about this science investigation was that, one, students worked really well collaboratively. They were able to have really strong peer discussion, questioning, challenging each other's ideas, their opinions, their thoughts, and it was a real engaging conversation. You wouldn't get that if it was an individual task. I thought all the activities that we completed were all achievable and all for the class for them to do. I thought I was diverse in catering for all and making sure that they were able to do it and achieve. That's what we want, students to build with success and interact with it. And also creating the investigation that required active participation. Students being involved in their own independent learning at times with the research, utilising digital technologies. And another critical thing as well was actually letting the students know that activity 2 would be assessed. That allowed for students to really put care and detail into what they were doing, and that supported in the work being at a high standard. The Australian curriculum, the unit constructed by the Australian curriculum, the descriptors and the achievement standards within the Year 6 Biological Sciences strand. The assessment of the unit was guided by this, and that ensured that I was meeting the achievement standards in Year 6 for science. Scamp and Preston, teaching primary science constructively. This text suggested and supported me in children's sketching and other representations, annotations, sequences, diagrams, graphs, scales can all be used as an assessment tool. And that's what we talk about with scaffolding, allowing students to demonstrate their thinking, their critical thinking and understanding onto paper, and no matter what format. And as it says, annotations, sequences, diagrams, graphs, scales, let's utilize that information because that's them showing their understanding. Another resource that I used to support in this lesson was the TEFL framework. Obviously, that really encourages students to utilize visual resources within the classroom. And so creating food webs and then the students producing a visual representation of a food web was utilizing that and making sure that we are interacting with visual and physical resources in the classroom.